Norm, professionally, personally, Dulos, Alex Jones, what has this past year been like, especially coming up on the 1-year anniversary now of Jennifer's disappearance?
Wild Ride summarizes it. I mean, this year in particular has been unusual. It began with intense public interest in a couple of my cases, and for the last 10 weeks I've been sequestered away at home, hoping not to get sick. So it's been one extreme to another.
Starting with the case surrounding Fotis Dulos, Michelle Troconis spoke out for the first time, saying, essentially in a statement in Spanish, which I'm still a little bit confused about, she said that it was a mistake to ever have trusted Fotis Dulos, essentially. What's your take on that? Why do you think she put out this statement?
You know, when Fotis died, I lost my client, and an estate was opened to wind up his affairs. And the estate has made it clear that they represent what remains of Fotis's interest, and have instructed me not to speak or comment on the case at all. And I am obliged, as a matter of professional ethics, to honor them. So while I have opinions, I'm not at liberty to share them.
I totally get it, and I want to ask you those questions respectful of that fact. The night that Mr. Dulos died, just on a personal matter, I remember watching you at that press conference, and you were emotionally and visibly shaken, and you kept saying, what did I miss? What did I miss? You know, in a way, you kind of felt like this, in a way, with his death was your fault. Right now, months later, Norm, what's something that keeps you up at night, bang in your head? What did you miss if you go back over the last 12 months?
Every trial lawyer has briefcases full of regrets. The judgments you make are always difficult. You make the best ones you can and hope they're right. I suppose the takeaway from this year has been I can protect a client from everyone but themselves. I wish I had seen better the distress he was under.
If you were to go back in a time machine, Norm, and go back to May 24th, 2019, the day that Jennifer disappeared, if you had to do this entire process over again, meeting Mr. Dulos, representing him, the press conferences, the court appearances, what would you do differently?
I don't know that I would do anything differently.
Even with the outcome?
Yes.
Why do you say that?
Again, I'm not at liberty to discuss in any detail my relationship with Mr. Dulos or the case against him. But when I said the night of his death, I didn't see this coming. What did I miss? I'm still not sure that this was foreseeable, given everything that I know and knew at the time.
Just from an outsider's perspective looking in, is there any way in which you feel that you failed in this case?
My client's dead. Yes.
But you wouldn't go back and do it any differently?
Correct.
You understand my confusion with that?
No, I think what you're saying is I think what your confusion is, if I understand it, is if you failed, how could you have succeeded? And what I told you is I think a lawyer's job is to protect clients from the world, but you can't protect a client from themselves. I don't know what led Mr. Dulos to make the decision he did, and I never will know.
I totally get it, and I understand that there's probably frustration with that on your end, as it is for anyone who really followed this case, the unanswered questions. And in an effort to maybe answer them or not, I understand the situation you're in right now, but I know that the gag order's lifted, but so many people around this country have looked at that final letter written by him. I know you can't say much about it, if anything at all. But if you look at that day that he decided to take his own life, and all of us were watching that entire situation play out. Apparently, he was notified of an emergency bond hearing, and there were twists and turns with it, but he took one piece of paper to write down his final message. He mentioned you, his lawyer, in that paper, saying that you could explain what happened with, quote unquote, the trash bags on Albany Avenue. I know you probably can't say anything, but isn't there a burning desire, if there's something that you know that he says that you could explain, if you have some knowledge inside of you that could vindicate him, clear his name, give some insight, which you said that you want to fight to continue to do posthumously, isn't there a burning desire in you to share that information somehow?
Yes.
And what can you do about it now that you don't represent that estate? Like, explain that feeling of knowing something that can clear someone's name that you deeply cared about, and when are you going to share it? How is that information, the truth, going to come out?
I don't know that it ever does. I mean, the fact of the matter is that my relationship was with Mr. Dulos. He's died. His estate winds up his affairs. The lawyers who are managing that estate have seen fit to instruct me to stand down. They elected not to advance his interest by way of litigation. Whether they are pursuing intellectual property rights in his story is not something they've discussed with me. They've made it clear that, and the attorney-client privilege, and the privilege between his that pertains to his communications with me extends beyond his death. So my hands are tied. Though I have an interest in telling his story, I don't have the right to tell it, and it would be unseemly for me to seek to acquire that right. The estate controls his affairs, and it's the estate's decision about whether to ever make efforts to tell a better story or not.
I totally get it. Your team and you put hours, weeks, months into Mr. Dulos's case. Just curious, were you ever paid for any of that work you did?
I'm not going to comment on anything involving my relationship with Mr. Dulos.
Want to move on now. You know, some of the most famous and well-respected citizens of our country, Norm, were defense attorneys. Look at John Adams defending the British at the Boston Massacre. I mean, these people are notable figures. He even went on to become president. Is there something in these high-profile cases with major notoriety and spotlight surrounding them that draws you to them?
It's not the cases themselves. I think it's idiosyncratic factors arising from my own past. I was abandoned as a child, and by my father, who I didn't see for some 40 years. My mother took it hard, and I was sent to live with relatives where my presence was tolerated but not welcome. And so I think I am drawn to cases involving outsiders or people who are scorned, because I felt scorned where I was forced to sleep as a child. And when I see a person in that situation, I suppose I'm applying balm to old wounds of my own from childhood. I don't want to see that person abandoned. I know what it's like to cry alone at night. And I'm drawn to those kind of cases for reasons all of my own, reasons having to do with perhaps shortcomings of mine rather than any heroic attributes.
I want to dive into that if you don't mind. I'm fascinated by your story. You wrote something on your website, a blog post last year entitled, "How do you defend those people?" And you wrote, you know, the folks I stand beside are me. In some bizarre twist of fate, I repeat the abandonment cycle. You're talking about your father leaving you. You said, I defend hated and scorned people, and candidly, there's nowhere I'd rather be than by their side. Why? I'm guessing it had something to do with silent tears I wept with no one to hear them. My clients will not be alone. They need the defense a little boy never got. In a way, Norm, just reading your story and trying to put all these pieces together, it seems like you're trying to be the father for these clients, but instead of your father, not abandoning your clients and trying to correct that in some way, knowing what they're feeling if you do abandon them. Am I somewhat right on this?
You know, it sounds pretty good to me. Yeah, I mean, I'm a work in progress like everybody else. You know, I'll turn 65 in September, so I've had a long life to consider all my acts and omissions. And I've done psychoanalysis for 10 years, 4 mornings a week at 7 o'clock on the couch, asking, why in the hell am I doing what I'm doing for a living? There have got to be easier things. And, I think in the end, I am drawn to chaos because chaos is what I know. I like representing the scorned because I know what it is to be scorned. I'm comfortable in that position. And there's a sporting aspect to it as well. It's the biggest challenge I can think of. Walking into a courtroom of people who are seething with hostility to your client inspires something like a competitive zeal in me. You want my client, you got to come through me to get him. Let's see what you got.
Mental health obviously seems really important in your own life. It's obviously made a difference, and you, like you said, you spent 4 mornings a week on the couch still to this day. It begs the question, if a lot of your clients took care of their mental health and they were on the couch 4 mornings a week, do you think that your business would be as booming as it is? Think back to Fotis Dulos or other people, other clients that you've represented. A lot of this, do you think, could have been prevented if they took care of their mental health the way that you did?
I don't know how well I've taken care of mine. You should read my hate mail. But, lawyers are taught in law school that clients bargain within the law's shadow, that a lawyer's skill is to be able to determine what the law will tolerate. and advise clients on how to adjust their behavior to stay on the right side of the law. I think lawyers are not trained well. Most of what I see involves shadows, but they're shadows cast from deep wounds within the psyche of the people I represent. They've been harmed by others or they've harmed themselves. I'm not sure how many of these folks really can help what they've done. Sure, the discrete choices, they could have turned an on or an off switch at that moment, but the situations in which those choices, they find themselves, where those choices become available to them, just aren't situations most of us find themselves in. I've been angry enough to kill, but I've never killed another human being. I've thought about it. I've wanted to do so from time to time. But the idea of putting myself in a situation where my wish could become close to a fulfilled act had never even come close. But yet, I've represented any number of men and women who have killed. It's astonishing to me. So, I don't know whether their lives could have turned out differently. We hold them accountable for discrete choices they've made, but we never take account of the dark currents that make those choices look good or reasonable at the moment they occur. And that may be more than the criminal law can do.
How frustrating was it for you to be defending somebody for the past year, looking back at this 1-year anniversary, standing in front of the courthouses, in front of the media, and have certain members of the media, in your words, convict your client based in the court of public opinion? As we look at video of you walking in past the media, you're known to love the media and to flip things on reporters' heads. And in a way, Norm, it's fun to watch. But how frustrating was it to have to prove your case inside of a courtroom and also outside in front of a press gaggle?
I don't know if it was frustrating. It was a challenge that I loved and that I continue to love. I think it's easy to cast judgment, and we are drawn. I have a theory that we're drawn to criminal cases because we're all silent cowards. That the person who stands the loudest on the courthouse steps screaming, "You're guilty," is the person who's identifying with the accused and realizes how much they'd like to do what he did. And because they've restrained what they think he did, and because they've restrained themselves, they can't forgive the guy who actually got away with doing something that they can't permit themselves to do. So, calling out people's rage and desire for vengeance when they don't even know the fact is good sport, and I enjoy it, and I think it's healthy for the Republic.